So I started podcasting about a year ago in February of 2019, and I was having a good time with a co-host. And for whatever reason, we recorded 16 episodes, and then it just fizzled out. You know, she kind of bagged out on the podcast, and so for quite a bit of time, I was just kind of, meandering. Then, a little depressed about the situation. And I didn't know if I wanted a podcast, but I still enjoyed listening to them. And I still was a part of several podcast groups, on Facebook. And I really was like at the verge of just saying, fuck it, I'll, get rid of my equipment and, and just move on and do something else. And I can still get enjoyment listening to the podcast. And then I saw this call to action for a podcast accountability group. And I threw my hat in the ring because I thought, maybe it could, maybe it could be useful to me. I needed to get my juices flowing again. And so that's where I ended up, being introduced to you, Mark. So what made you decide to do an accountability group for podcasting?
Good evening, good afternoon, Rodney. I don't know whether is it morning or afternoon over there?
It is evening. It's 4:20. It's before dinner. What is before dinner?
It's AM. At morning is AM. PM is past morning. That's how I try to remember it. Yeah, mate. Can I first of all say it's awesome to be on your show, mate. I've been really, really looking forward to this. I'm a big fan of yours, and it's an honour to be on your show. So why did I start it up? Well, I'm one of these guys that whenever I start anything, I've been podcasting now for nearly 4 years. Whenever I do anything, I always have to go balls deep in it. And generally, I'm a leader. I'm the leader kind of guy, and I always have to. Whenever I start something, I have to start something up alongside of it. So for me, it's not good enough just being a podcaster. I've got to do something along the other side. I've always been a leader. I like to lead from the front and just and pull people through as I'm learning. Like my nickname that I've got now is my fame name is the Podcast Scholar, and the whole purpose of it is a scholar is somebody that teaches, but all the while he's teaching, he's also learning from others. So I'm kind of like, I just thought if I can be chucking things back into the system as well as learning, that's what I'm all about, mate, basically.
All right. So, but did you think, like, in its inception, did you think that, people were going to take to it? Like, what made you think as far as that? Because the group that you pitched the idea, there's thousands of podcasters. And it seems like everybody has, everybody wants to, either advertise their podcast, or there's a lot of, it's a lot of back and forth and stuff like that. But accountability, was that something that you felt that was needed?
Yeah. Well, I always ad hoc everything I do. So I kind of make it up as I go along. And I was listening to a podcast that I normally listen to, the Cliff Ravenscraft show, and Cliff was going on about accountability and helping other people out and holding yourself accountable and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, you know what, I could do that with podcasting. If I set up an accountability group and if I get people on board and we're all teaching one another stuff, and it's going to be beneficial for me. So I went on a Facebook page. I can't remember which one it was. I can't really can't remember. And I just started chucking it out there, asking people that if they would like to join my accountability group. I'm looking for like-minded podcasters to join my group so that we can all learn from one another. And I had loads and loads of people come through from various parts of the world, from various levels, beginners, people that's been there for years. And I just basically went with my gut instinct. I was looking for people that just felt right. We go on about this spiritual awareness and a lot of stuff we talk about, but I just was looking for people that I felt was similar to me, that I could learn from, and it just basically felt right. And that's how I came across you, Rodney. I don't know why I chose you, but you're still here today, so things must be going right, mate.
That was going to be my next question, but that's neither here nor there. The point is I'm here, so I must have been damn good or something. I don't know. Maybe it was the voice or it was the haircut.
I can't really remember what it was, because you got to remember, mate, is that I hadn't seen you before, so it wasn't the haircut, it wasn't the Uncle Phil beard that you've got there from Fresh Prince. I think it was just the fact that I liked your style of podcast. Your podcast to me sounds. I just love your voice. You know, it's very relaxing, very calming, and I could listen to you talking for hours, mate. In all honesty, and you've got so much goodness to spread to the world. You've got so much advice. You know, you're a good leader in yourself, to be honest with you. And I kind of think that was your the thing that shone through about you to me.
Okay, so just like summarize real quick, like what did you do before podcasting, as far as you don't have to get into your whole career, but that tied into podcasting, or was it just a cold leap? You just wanted to do it?
All my life, I've always thought that I wanted to be something different. I felt as if I was somebody that I didn't want to do the 9 to 5 job. I always felt that I was destined for stage or talking or doing something different. And as a kid, you know, I was always I was always setting up shows at my parents' house, you know, at Christmas time, when people used to come around. We was always like, I get my cousins on board and we would pretend to be in a band or something. So I was always a kind of a guy that was trying new stuff out and just trying to be on a stage and on a platform or something like that. And then when I was about the age of 13, I got involved in CB radio, Citizens Band Radio. And back in those days, it was quite a big thing, like it is over in the States. You know, it was a massive thing. And I was talking to people all around the world, you know, from my county that I live in to when the conditions was running right. I was talking to people all around the world, and I just enjoyed talking to people. And I can remember playing a bit of radio. I used to play some music on the CB radio and having all the truck drivers telling me to get off the call-in channel or the truckers channel and that. But I always felt like I was destined to be talking to people, but also playing music. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I got involved in community radio here in the UK. I got involved in a radio station and just basically done a 90s show talking about 90s music. And I just thought I'd give it a go and see what it was like. And I'd done that for about 2 years over 2 different stations. Decided that I didn't like to be told what to do. I wanted to be my own boss. So that was when I set up my own studio at home, and I was going to do freelance and got into podcasting. I never went down the freelance radio route. I just got involved in podcasting, and now 170 episodes in on my podcast, I'm here with you today.
170. So, you know, I did look it up a little bit because I wanted to have at least some kind of accurate information. So when you did your first episode, which was February in 2017.
Oh, was it really that long ago? Was it?
Yeah.
You're making me feel like like an experienced podcast.
Yeah.
There, right?
So February 2000, you press record.
Yeah.
You know, what are you actually like? What are you thinking? Are you like, man, this is going to change the world? Or, you know, I'm going to like, what is your mindset when you press record in February of 2017?
Well, I know that I had a lot of shit to tell the world, and I came out of radio, which it's successful with the two stations. With the 2 stations that I was in, the first station, I was just smashing it. I had more listens than all the other presenters put together. I smashed it. So I went into the next station thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna smash this. And it wasn't a huge success. It wasn't right. And I kind of blame that on the way that the station was set up. I don't think they were promoting it enough, you know. So I then thought, well, if I go by myself and give it loads of promotion, you know, I'd heard from loads of people that podcasting was the next huge platform to get on. I thought, right, I can do this. I can be my own boss. I can interview who I want to talk to. I can, you know, go it alone. And the only person to blame then is myself. So I just chucked myself in the deep end. I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. I didn't know who I was going to talk to. I just thought I'll press record on the microphone and just talk about any old shit. I can't tell you what I talked about on my first episode because it seems that long ago. But straight away, after about my 5th or 6th episode, I had 2,000 listeners a week. And I was just like, what the hell's going on here? You know, I just couldn't understand why people were tuning in to listen to me talking crap, basically. I wanted to go down the route of doing it to make money. And then I just wanted to give back to the world. You know, I hadn't really really worked out why I'd done it. It was just a hobby. And I don't know what else to say, Rodney, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm here, like I say, 170 episodes now. I'm still not making any money, but I'm enjoying it. That's the thing. I'm really, really enjoying what I'm doing now, and meeting people like yourself and talking to different people every week. And it's an absolute honor to be able to be with everybody, like, you know, and chatting to people.
Yeah. So, okay. So did you start off with like interviews, or your first few episodes was just you talking?
I think my first episode was me telling the world what sort of my podcast is going to be like. And I think the second episode I'd done was with a guy called, let me think. I can't remember what it was. It was a fellow presenter at my radio station. Spriggsy, his name was, and he'd done a show on a Tuesday night called I can't even remember what his show was called, the Spriggsy Show or something like that. And he was also the director of the station that I was working for. So it was at that time I was juggling. I was still presenting my radio show, my Monday night show called the Monday Night Jukebox, and I was still podcasting. So I got him on, and we was doing a bit of promotional work for the station that I was working for, which was called NCB Radio, which stands for North Cornwall Broadcasting. So yeah, that was my first guest, just talking about broadcasting and talking about podcasting and radio work and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, cool. So, you know, we've gotten to know each other. It's probably going on a year now. We got to be close to a year, because I remember we were doing some stuff.
Just before Christmas last year.
Yeah, we were doing stuff for Christmas, and I think I've gotten to know you pretty well. One of the things that we have fun with, or we talked about, we shared both our loves of hip hop. So I got the formal stuff out the way. I just kind of wanted you to introduce yourself, and now we could just shoot the shit and have a good time, and just let people get to know us a little bit more candidly, at least our opinions on certain things. Is there a chance today that I'll get to talk to Boris Johnson?
Well, my friend, quite simply, I'm looking forward to it lots, because it's just a way of having fun. And what I'm really excited about is you've got a new president. No, is it a prime minister? No, it's a president over in the United States. Oh, Biden. What do you think of Biden?
It's all gumbo, a bunch of different ingredients in the same soup for me, man. And that's it's a good impromptu impression. But yeah, so hip hop. Let's talk about it, man. What's your first song you remember? Like, what was the first thing that stood out to you in hip hop?
Oh, well, I was thinking about this. I wrote a few things down, because my first experience of hip hop, we'll start with my first experience, I think was way back in 1993, because over in the UK at that time, I mean, I was latter stages of school. I was going into sixth form. And I used to go into the common room, and the upper six, you know, the older guys, they were all listening to stuff like Suede and indie music and the Smiths. And I was into that sort of music, but I was also into dance music. I was into grunge, like Nirvana. So I had a huge like range of music around me. I was one of these guys that I just dressed how I wanted to dress. I dressed a bit with dancey gear. I dressed in, you know, NBC jackets, a bit of a grungy look. I had curtains sort of hair, and I just listened to what I wanted to listen to. And I used to just dress how I want to dress. I was a very independent kind of guy. And I can remember after I used to finish sixth form, I'd go home and I'd run indoors. I'd get changed. I'd nip over the park, because there was a park opposite the road from me. And I used to get into my football gear. My mates used to meet up, a little bit like you guys over in the States playing basketball, hitting the court. We used to get over the park and play football. And one day this very strange lad rocked up. He rocked up in a pair of basketball boots, and he had some dungarees on with bullet holes in the leg, and he had an American bandana on. And I thought, who's this cockwomble rocking here like that? And I went up and just like introduced myself, and he had a real strong Brummie accent.
Wait. So he looked like this. What made you want to go up to him if he looked so crazy?
Well, because he was, you know, this is like, we're out in the country where I live, down in southwest UK. So when somebody new rocks up, it's just like, who is this guy? Everybody knows everybody's business. We all know everybody in the town. So this new guy rocks up, and I had to go and introduce myself because I'm that sort of guy. And he's skinning up in the shed. I'm about 14, 15 at the time. He's skinning up in the shed, and he's nodding his head. He's got his headphones on, and he takes his headphones off. And the first thing that I could hear coming out of his headphones was NWA, fuck the police. And I would say that was probably the first hip hop sound that I'd ever heard. When I was about the age of 14, and I got chatting to John, and I didn't have a smoke with him on that occasion, but I did discover, weed from him. But he was all into his Cypress Hill and NWA. And then a few months later, my mum and dad bought Sky TV, and they opened up a whole different world, which was then MTV. When MTV was good, it wasn't just documentaries, it was decent music. And I would say the first song that really, really ever hit home to me was Ice Cube, Check Yourself. And it was the Daz Effects remix with the Grandmaster Flash backing music, and the message.
The message, yep.
Yeah, and that was just continuing all the time playing on MTV, and I would say that was probably the song that introduced me properly to hip hop.
All right, so you said NWA, and you 14 years old. All right, had you had any interaction with the police at that time?
Yeah, I at that time I hadn't. None whatsoever. I didn't have any issues with the police until I was about 15, 16, to be honest with you. So what are you thinking of at that moment when you hear that song? Fuck the police. If that's your introduction, like, what are you thinking when you at 14 and at this point I'm assuming that your relationship with the police was, decent. You hear this song, what is your immediate thought about somebody just blatantly saying fuck the police? To be honest with you, I mean, I didn't really pay much attention to it. I mean, the thing is, at the age of 14, I didn't really think of it down that route of a police and a political thing. To me, I liked the beat of it. I loved the beat. And I also, it was a kind of thing that, what I discovered from hip hop was that there was loads of swearing and cussing and, talking about shagging birds. And it was all almost like a funny thing to listen to, if you know what I mean. It was a sort of music that I couldn't listen to with my parents in the house because they would come up and tell me off for listening to all this swearing and black music, which, if you know what I mean. So it was a kind of thing that I played behind the scenes when my parents weren't there, a little bit of a rebellious thing, if you know what I mean. So I can't really say that, I didn't see the political side of fuck the police. It was more of a, get where I'm coming from. It was more of like a funny sort of gestury sort of experience at the time. Yeah, I would liken it to like comedy records back in the days. Like for me as a kid, when I was a lot younger, listening to like Richard Pryor or something like that, where you weren't supposed to be listening to it. It was like hush hush. And if somebody had the tape or a record when their parents weren't home or your parents weren't home, you put that record on and you got so. And you didn't quite know what it meant, like what he was saying, all the stuff. You know the words because you heard the words, but to actually have somebody, having a conversation, which hip hop has always been to me, like a conversation with the audience. To have somebody having that and speaking like you and your friends speak as far as the language, because I know our parents thought we were angels and all that good stuff, but when we got around our friends, it was just like we let loose. So to actually that was for me too, like to hear somebody talking like me and my friends talk was refreshing. Do you remember Houdini 5 Minutes of Funk? Did you ever hear that? No. Okay, so that was when you get a chance. So now you got a little homework. 5 Minutes of Funk. That was my first introduction. What sort of age was that then? What sort of year was that? I was really young. I'm saying this had to be like in the early 80s. I had to be. I want to say that I had started hearing hip hop. Maybe I was like 8 or 9 years old. See, you got to remember, mate, is that hip hop wasn't a thing over here in the UK. It wasn't where I was. It wasn't a huge thing until about the 90s. So I was listening to stuff like Ice Cube and NWA and Cypress Hill and Ice-T. I was listening to that before I'd even heard of Grandmaster Flash or the Sugar Hill Gang, that they were around way before, right? But I'd never even heard of them. That wasn't my genre of music. I wasn't interested in it at all. So, listening to NWA, I mean, another thing as well was I hadn't had any experience with any American people. So it was quite hard for me to understand what they were talking about. There was a lot of American slang coming from it and a lot of words that I just didn't understand. So, hip hop was a massive thing back for me because it was a rebellious stage. It was listening to music that I shouldn't really be listening to. It was also trying to work out what they were talking about. So it was quite a powerful thing for me at that time.
Yeah. So, because I'm thinking like now it's easy. You just hop on the internet and, you can find out what the lyrics are. So I'm trying to figure out like at that age, how you guys, because you didn't know anything about like, how did you guys decipher what kids were actually saying, what the songs were saying, what was the message? And did you guys incorporate the language into your everyday?
Oh, God. That's a difficult question, Rodney, because I can remember where I got my first album from, right? And back in what you was talking about then about finding the music. Well, my mate John, he lived up in Birmingham, which was a very multicultural area, and there was a radio station there that played a lot of hip hop music. So he would go up there and he'd record some tapes of just like a radio presenter's playing hip hop at night, bringing it back, and I would listen to that. And then when I started getting into it, I went to the library to do some schoolwork. And in the library, there was places where there was a section where you could rent albums. You could rent them out like a library book, but there was albums. And in the rock section was an album called Home Invasion, right, by Ice-T. Now, at the time, I didn't know what that was all about, but I can tell you now, right, that Ice-T, Home Invasion, is not in the same caliber as Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, and Aerosmith, right?
But they had it in there.
Yeah, but they had it in there. So this is what we was dealing with, Rodney. I mean, all these shops and that Our Price and Virgin and all these places, they were putting all hip hop in with rock music. It didn't have its own section back in the 90s. So I really, really had to go out and look for hip hop in the 90s. I really had to go to the shops and find it. It was really, really difficult for me to find it at the time. And I can honestly tell you, really, mate, going back to the question, about the lyrics and stuff like that. At that stage, I didn't listen to the lyrics. I loved hip hop for the beat, for the rhythm, for the backing tune. So like hip hop, the first hip hop track that I was talking about with Ice Cube, Check Yourself. That was a Grandmaster Flash backing track. And that was what I was listening to. I was I was feeling the vibes from the tunes rather than what they were talking about and rapping about. So for me at that stage, I wasn't really, to be honest with you, even listening to the lyrics at that point. I know it's sad, but it was more of the rhythm, the beats, that was what done it for me at the time.
So before that, were you guys experiencing or were you guys involved in like breakdancing or anything like that? Because that was like when it first started, they went together. The hip hop, the rapping, the music, and the breakdancing and the dance battles, which is what we used to do back in the days. Instead of fighting, you would meet up with a bunch of, you and like 4 or 5 of your friends would meet up against another 4 or 5 people and break out the cardboard, and you have a boom box, press play.
That big thing you used to carry on your shoulder.
Exactly. Like, that was the culture. Like you, in that, and you also did graffiti. You would, tag. You had to find your tag name and tag all over the place. And, I wasn't very good at any of it. I was decent at everything, but, it was like, that was the introduction for us. So the music was part of it, but did you guys experience that breakdancing? Because I know like breakdancing and stuff like that is still huge right now. People still are, really, going hard on it. Were you introduced to that before or after the music?
it was out there, you know. I mean, it had been around for years, but you know, I was too young. I was too young to experience it at that time. I mean, the year prior to this, we was having like Vanilla Ice Baby, and we also had MC Hammer, You Can't Touch This. Yeah. So it was breaking through. It was slowly breaking through, and I mean, at that sort of time, we had De La Soul, which was a UK act. They were in on the scene at the moment, and we had like, then you had that band Snap.
Yeah, I Got the Power.
Yeah, it was like a cross thing. It was like dance music, but there was also, they were dressed up like hip hoppers and rappers and stuff. So, and then you obviously had Michael Jackson, which was confused me because it wasn't really hip hop music, and it was a black guy that was trying to change the way he looked. And there was a lot of confusion coming through. But, you know, back in the day when you had Thriller, you know, and he's dressing up like, you know, these hip hop artists and these dancers, street dancers. That was how I remember it. But I cannot honestly say prior that I had much experience with American culture, music whatsoever. I think prior to that, the only thing I can remember from America was Different Strokes with Little Arnold and Sesame Street and Chips, you know, the old motorbikes.
Oh yeah. Chips was huge. All those things you mentioned were huge over here, at least for me. You know, Arnold.
And then obviously Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you know, being it yourself, you know,
a little later. But remember, he was a hip hop artist way before that.
Yeah,
so I was from.
Love that tune.
Summertime, but he had before that, Girls of the World Ain't Nothing But Trouble. Parents Just Don't Understand. He had a bunch of like, hits that came out before he actually. So a lot of it. You said your friend used to go and tape and bring you back the tapes. A lot of, because we didn't have hip hop stations either. You got like a Friday night. It may have been like a 3 or 4 hour window where they played hip hop music. And at first it might have just been an hour. So on those days, Fridays for us was DJ Red Alert. No, I think Chuck Chill Out was Friday and DJ Red Alert was Saturday. But those were the two guys that, you know, we would listen to them play the latest music, and we would put in our tape, the old tape recorders. You press play and record.
Yeah.
You put it on pause. Because it came to a song or a commercial, like we were doing editing back then. If it came to a song or commercial, you press the pause and then you let it up. So yeah, it was huge in the community, but it wasn't worldwide. And wherever you went, you can hear it. Where I grew up at, you can hear it. But as far as once it really started to pop on the radio, a lot of the acts probably that went around the country, you know, we had heard about already. So you guys might have been getting it a little later. But like I said, the breakdancing came along with that before that. When do you feel like you because you mentioned that you were just listening to the beats, like when did you start to like the words? When did the words start to even mean anything to you?
I think that was when I got to become friends with John a little bit more, to be honest with you. And it got to the stage where I was having a smoke in the shed with him, and I was getting into
regular tobacco.
Yeah, I know, it's smoking weed, you know, so I was...
I'm just messing with you. That's why I said regular tobacco. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, no, I was smoking weed at the time with my mate John. Well, it wasn't even weed, it was hash. So, you know, he sat there in the shed, you know, burning this little chocolate block, it looked like, and sprinkling it out. And I'd be sat there with him, like, watching it all, because this was all new to me. Do you know what I mean? And in the background, he was listening to the Cypress Hill hits from the bong, and I'd be asking him a question, you know, what's a bong and all that lot. And before long, that was the route that I went down, you know, Cypress Hill, from the album Black Sunday, another album that I loved at the time. And, you know, Cypress Hill was cool for me because they were all about smoking weed, and they were trying to promote the smoking weed and all that sort of stuff. So that's when I got down the route of Cypress Hill. So that was probably the first album where I started listening properly to the lyrics and, you know, learning from the lyrics, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so when you say like it was literally like a school for you, where you're like, what's a bong? Like
total, man.
Yeah,
total.
so how powerful is that in music in general, not just hip hop, but how powerful is music that it goes across the world globally. People learn different languages or different songs, or, there's people that can recite whole hip hop songs that don't even speak the language, but they know the words just from listening. Now, what I used to do, I don't know if you used to do that, but I used to play it and stop it, play it and stop it so I can get the lyrics. Because we used to, part of the, the thing was to be able to recite your favorite songs. And, if somebody didn't know the words, it was like you look down on them, like, how you don't know the words to Biggie Hypnotize? You gotta know all the words. You gotta know all the, all the voice inflections and all the, the what's that when they have in the background, all the ad libs and everything. So you would spend hours upon hours, listening to this stuff and getting educated. And a lot of things that happened, like for me with NWA, it was refreshing to hear. They were like a voice for my generation. I'm 47. When we were kids, the kids that were out in the street, not everybody, but when we were kids, that's exactly how we talked. That's what we thought about the police. It's sad to say that's what we thought about women, like the stuff that you heard in that. Those are the conversations that we had, but we had really never heard it in music consistently. So that's why I gravitated towards it. It was, it was in Public Enemy. Some of the stuff that they did, their early stuff was great as well. But I mean, like they were Public Enemy when they some of the beats and some of it sounded like some of the music almost had like an alarm in it. You could hear like an alarm, like something was coming. So I used to love Cypress Hill as well. Cypress Hill had that, of course I used to smoke weed too back in the days. And, to listen to that, they had a song, I Want to Get High. That was one of my favorite songs.
Yes.
The beat, the beat, you just felt like, even if I listen to it now, I might, think about rolling something up. Of course I wouldn't do that. For the record.
But what I liked about Be Real as well is that he had that totally different voice. Mm-hmm. And what I suddenly started learning once I started listening to more hip hop is that, once upon a time when I first got into hip hop, I thought that it was a Black American thing. I thought that it was just, Black people that was listening to this music. I thought that it was just a Black person's music. But then once I started listening to all these bands like Onyx and like Cypress Hill and like House of Pain, I suddenly started realizing that there was different cultures of hip hop. It wasn't just the Black culture. You had Cypress Hill, and they had a different background. They were. Was it a Mexican? Was it Mexican?
Yeah, they are. I think they might be. I think Be Real might be. Yeah, I think he might be Honduran. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I should know this, but.
And then you've got like House of Pain with the Irish background.
Yeah.
So there was, Funk Dubious. There was all of these different East Coast and West Coast. So then it was beginning to get like a geography lesson for me then, trying to work out what was the East Coast all about and what was the West Coast about. So I was learning a bit of geography at the same time. Not only that, I was working out, there was a huge rivalry between the East Coast and the West Coast and record labels and all that sort of stuff. And this was when I realized that hip hop was massive. And, being a guy that loved his music in the UK, I never realized that in the 90s, the biggest selling music of the 90s was hip hop.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, in France, it was absolutely massive. French hip hop is huge.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. It was, because we could see the progression. Like I said, initially you just got a couple of hours on the weekend. And then you had stuff like, it was called The Box. Ralph McDaniels had a show called The Box where they would show the videos. And MTV, if you remember when MTV first came out, it was just basically a rock station.
Yeah.
But you had to have like a major hit in order for hip hop. But then you started to see hip hop. And then you saw like Yo MTV Raps where it was a hip hop show and they had the spring breaks and you got to see the artists. Now, before that, they would just, you could see them. Like I remember locally, when the Fat Boys came to a roller rink close to where I lived at. I don't remember how the promotion went, but I do remember that we knew when people were coming to town and people flocked on Run DMC, and what happened, when you have like a Run DMC with Aerosmith, you really have like an explosion of people because people that may not have paid attention to, Aerosmith, or may not have paid attention to Run DMC and hip hop. Now you have this and you can't even ignore it. It was so powerful, such a powerful song that you couldn't even ignore it. Then that led me into, who's Aerosmith? Oh, it's Steven Tyler. Now I'm looking at, now, and then I started finding out that some of the songs that I heard before and I heard my parents play or older people play was actually, some of these groups, the Stones and, and then I got a little bit into the grunge music, and music, good music was always good music, but it's like you said, it seemed like in the 90s, hip hop just exploded to the point where you couldn't, your McDonald's commercials, your soda commercials, the way people dressed, the way people wore their clothes, the style that you watching news reporters using some of the phrases during the course of their news, and it came off corny, but the impact, in the 90s was amazing. What do you think about, I'll go back to the 90s, but what do you think about hip hop today? Are you even into it?
Does hip hop exist anymore?
Yes.
To me, hip hop died about 15 years ago when you had the likes of what was it, like 50 Cent, and you had Eminem and Dre finishing up, and then you had Joe Budden, and all of these people, 50 Cent. Did I say these? But to me, that was the end. Jay-Z, and Ja Rule. These were all, to me, the end of hip hop. After that, literally, like Jay-Z said, hip hop died. Yeah. That's my opinion. Over in the UK, we've got a different kind of hip hop now. It's not hip hop at all. It's I can't even remember what it's called. What's that? It's I don't even know what it's called, mate.
Is that Stormzy? Because I actually like Stormzy.
Yeah, well, see, I don't like it at all, to be honest with you. I've seen Stormzy twice, and it's all right. But, it's like, my dad, when he was younger, he used to listen to the Beatles, and I would listen to the Beatles and I'd think it was shit, because that's my dad's genre. That's his age of music. Yeah. My age of music was hip hop. It was dance. It was grunge. It was like Oasis, and it was dance music, proper hard house dance, and underground stuff. And, it's not the same anymore. And it's not the fact that it's shit. It's just the fact that I'm an older person and I just don't get it. I don't understand it. So,
you become that old man that, if the ball bounces in your yard, the kids can't come in the yard and pick up their little ball. You're old and you're crusty now. You don't that hippity. You don't even call it hip hop now. It's hippity hop. And change the name of it. And yeah.
Well, somebody said to me the other day, they said, do you realise, Mark, you're a 90s lad? I'm like, yeah. They said, do you realise now that we're as close to 2050 as what we were 1990? Right. So that's scary. That is scary. Yeah. When I was a kid in the 90s when I'd listen to the Beatles and stuff, that was really old people's music. Well, that was like 30 years difference. Right. Now I'm listening to 90s music and kids are still listening to it like they were the Beatles, but I just feel that the 90s era was huge. I think it was like the 70s, it was a very, very changing time in music. And I still think to this day that it's very, very powerful. And I can listen to hip hop music now, like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and all of that sort of stuff. The album Doggy Style, I can put that today, and it's an absolute classic. Classic.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely classic. I don't think I have anything really new in any of, in my iPod or whatever. Everything I record is older music. There's a couple of artists that I still follow because they've been around since then. And every time they release something, I'll check in on it. But yeah, I agree. I don't know if it's still pretty popular, and everything's changed too now with the streaming and stuff like that, where you don't physically, rush to the record store to get an album. Back in the days, it was like an album release was not a digital thing. It wasn't an online thing. You had to stand in line instead of online to get that new album. And ripping that plastic off, that frustrating plastic off so you can get it and you put it in there. And if your tape broke or your CD, a little later, your CD started skipping, it was like the worst thing, imaginable. Now you can put it on your computer and, as long as your computer doesn't crash, you have it right there. And,
I mean, I'm intrigued, Rodney, because like, going back in like the 80s and 90s and that, when you had, hip hop music, the first, rap really. I mean, it was a very underground thing in the black community. Is that style, is that sort of thing still going on? Have you still got the underground hip hop rap scene? Are people still hooking up and doing freestyle in it? Is pop still alive in the States doing that sort of thing?
So there's underground stuff, and the big underground movement to me seems to be more the battle rapping, where there's no music. They just, it's basically, they're just battling each other, thinking of, some of the craziest shit to say to each other. So I think that's more underground, and even that's becoming mainstream because, once you get people wanting to sponsor it, and once a corporation sees value in something, they're vultures. They're going to come in and pick it and sell it and market it. So now, there's platforms, and with the internet and YouTube, there's different platforms. So it's never, I don't know if it could be underground like that because it's really not a secret anymore. The cool thing about the underground was, it just, you had to know, where it was. Somebody had to pass you a tape. It wasn't going to be on the radio. Somebody had to put you on and say, "Hey, Mark, you ever heard of so-and-so?" He said, "Nah, I never." He passed you that tape, and now you're a fan. And now, with the age of you and I, literally, when we finish recording, we can literally, go get a beats program and a music program, which garage band or whatever, and make beats and make a song, and we can release it tomorrow. So, there's really not an underground like that. I mean, I'm sure the music would be, if we made it, it'd be trash. But, nobody probably would listen to it. But there's really no underground like that. I don't know. Maybe I could be out of touch as well because I don't have my ear to the streets. Like I used to love being in the streets. Now work and go home.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Rodney, is I mean, how did you feel growing up listening to rap and hip hop music and, going to these underground places and listening to it and hearing it and having it as your own unique, being a black man, having it as your own unique form of music, something that was solely yours. How did you feel when the likes of Vanilla Ice and the Beastie Boys and Eminem, that was a bit later, but how did it feel then when these white men did come in on the scene and stepping into your niche?
Well, so
as a black guy, did that offend you at all, or did it bother you, or did it bother the people that you knew that was into the same sort of thing? What was that like?
No, so maybe on the surface, maybe people before they heard the music. So once you hear good music is good music. So even though people, try to pretend like they didn't like Vanilla Ice, Vanilla Ice was huge. Yeah, I could tell you, this was back then when everybody had like a nice sound system in their car. People were riding around with that doom, 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 and that's all you heard. So if it was a good song, it was a good song. But if you go further back, I believe her name was Blondie. There was a song called White Lines. Yeah, Blondie. So so those kind of things kind of crossed over.
I see. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So there was always people there that, it was always a hint there that it was for everybody. And it really came down to what the actual song. So I never felt any kind of way because if you put, music, music to your ears is music to your ears. So if it was a good song, I can listen to it and I'll play it over and over. I definitely, it was a group I talked to you before about, called Young Black Teenagers, which was there was all white kids with like dreads and stuff like that. So they were pretty popular back then. Third Base. Like there was, as long as it came off as authentic, and I'm putting up air quotes, authentic, I think it was able to survive in the community. Now, what happened with Vanilla Ice was, that's side stuff, and people started to find out, he wasn't the person he said he was. So we went through that whole keeping it real era where if you if you said something, you at least had to be somehow affiliated. You didn't actually have to kill somebody if you're talking about killing, but you had to at least know killers or rub elbows with killers or at least be there amongst the killers. You couldn't just, at my current stage, I couldn't just release an album right now talking about all the other stuff when all I do is go home and go to work. So,
right. Yeah.
So that became a point of contention when people didn't feel like it was authentic. But, the difference between all of those people, all of those groups, Beastie Boys were around for years, but to me, Beastie Boys was a hybrid.
Yeah, it wasn't rap.
Yeah, it was. They were rapping, but it was like a punk rap, rock kind of thing. It was like a hybrid group, but we did like them. Like No Sleep to Brooklyn is a rock song, right? Yeah. But it's hip hop though. It's hip hop, but it's.
Yeah, I would say it's almost like Rage Against Machine.
Right.
In the sense that it was like it wasn't a specific genre. It was just like a bit of a mixture, wasn't it? So you got Rage Against Machine. There, to me, there's a huge rock beat in the background, but they're rapping.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what Beastie Boys was like to me.
And not as rock leaning as the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but kind of like that kind of vibe where you got the beats, you got some lyrics, some stuff that, made you vibe. But it didn't, like, to me, Beastie Boys, they were hip hop, they're a hip hop group, but they didn't fit into just that hip hop. There was some guys that was just hard, like you say KRS-One, that's hip hop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no mistaking everything he says, he does, how he moves, how he talks. He is hip hop. He can, the information you get in the songs, So there's certain people that work. Now, Eminem is a different case because he had his own lane. Now, what made him so, popular, I believe, is that he had his own lane. He didn't try to fit in with anything,
Yeah.
A lot of it was him.
That the other day.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A lot of it was him, but it was no different than, typical hip hop, a person telling their story from their point of view. They're angry. They want to do better. Sometimes they want to do worse. They want to hurt people. Like, if you think about the theme, it's the same thing, but it was his voice, and it was told from, a quote unquote trailer park, which is, here, I don't know if that's a word over there for you guys, but trailer park here is basically like, so if you say black people live in the projects, the poor white people are from trailer parks. So his music was from that quote unquote trailer park white kid whose life is not dissimilar from the kids from the black kids from the project. It's just a different location and maybe some different challenges, but the lifestyle, what you see, what you experience is the same thing. So his message resonated, but it also was funny. He made fun of himself. I don't think there's anybody, I can't think in hip hop, if there's anybody that could make, making fun of your own mother, like sellable. Yeah. He managed to, not only make it sell, like make the killing of his own mother,
That's why he was so huge, because we've always said it in the past when we've chatted in our accountability group, is that, to smash it, you've got to be yourself. You've got to be unique. And that's exactly what he was like. Hip hop was always about, a bit of drug dealing, a bit streetwise and shootings and stuff like that. Whereas Eminem, it wasn't like that at all. Like you say, it was about Kim, his missus, and his mum and all this lot, and making fun of the whole situation. People not knowing whether he really was with this Kim girl, or whether he really had fallen out of his mum. It was the Eminem show. It was the experience. Correct. People didn't know. And I mean, this went on for 3 or 4 albums. People asking questions. Is this right? Isn't it right? Is it right? Not really knowing what was going on. And Eminem, to me, he changed hip hop. He was towards the tail end of it. And, he made vast amounts of money from hip hop. And all I can do is take my hat off to him, because, he was different. He changed the style. And he is he's amazing at what he does. I mean, there's a track that he does called Rap God on his last album. Have you heard that track?
Oh yeah, for sure.
How he spits those lyrics so quick as what he does. I've never heard anybody do it so well.
Well, now I got to put you on the Twister. You know what Twister is? So look up Twister when you put that in your notes. He might have actually did the Rap God. He might have actually did the lyrics. Twister was one of the first rappers back in the days that was speed rapping like that. You have Bone Thugs and Harmony that did that.
Nice, that's going back now.
Yeah. So there was some guys that, but no, see the thing for me about him, and like I said, he took, like he did in the 8 Mile movie. Did you see the 8 Mile movie? At the end when he's battling, the last battle where he took everything that you could say about himself and said it first and put it out there. And then you kind of just got to shrug your shoulders at a guy like that that's willing to be that transparent, and he takes the power away from you. So that's what his music was always about, taking the power away from the absurd nonsense, the politically correct. And he would, if you listen to his albums, he was listening to the criticisms because he would make songs about the stuff that people said about him. And he made it into, so that's what's unique about hip hop, where people, initially didn't feel it was music because nobody was playing an instrument. So it was like, oh, that's not music. They don't play instruments. All they doing is, I can do that. I used to hear that all the time from older people. I can do that. No, that's just spitting. But what he was at, what hip hop artists are able to do is they can take our whole conversation that we're having and break it down and make it rhyme. That's the genius of it, to be able to, because not everybody can take a scenario, can walk you from parking your car, your drive home from work, park your car, get in, make your meal, talk to your wife, blah, blah, blah. The guys will literally take that and take the words and make it rhyme, make a song, add a beat, add a hook. To me, that takes a special skill. So that was one of his greatest gifts, that to be able to paint a picture for you. That's why I loved Notorious B.I.G. You can hear, like when I'm listening to his music, I was there with him. Like I felt like I was there with them. So I just touched on a point real quick. Did you ever feel like, because they weren't playing instruments, did you ever like hold that against hip hop artists? Like, oh, they don't play instruments. This isn't music.
No, not at all, because it was a talent. I saw it from how I saw hip hop. There was loads of different sections. Like you'd have the MC on the stage, you'd have the guy in the background doing the mixing and the scratching. That was its own,
DJ. Yep.
That was awesome. With Public Enemy, you had Terminator X in the background stuff. That was awesome. And then you had, we had a guy over here called, what was his name again? I can't remember. Was it Razel? He was called, and he could do all the human beats.
Yeah. I know Razel. Yeah.
Then you had all of these different people doing different things and chucking it all together, and that was what was amazing for me. The one thing that upset me about hip hop, and the one directional change that it took it for a while, was when you were starting to get R&B coming into hip hop. I didn't enjoy that at all. You had Snoop Dogg with Doggy Style, and there was a lot of R&B coming in with it, and I found that the West Coast style of music was different to the East Coast. So the West Coast, you were starting to get this more of a R&B background to it, whereas the East Coast was a lot more different.
The East Coast was more boom bap. But what they did was, so what the smart thing that the West Coast artists did was they because they're all sampling the same songs. They're sampling George Clinton, Funkadelics, James Brown. It's a lot of other people that get sampled, but a lot of what the West Coast started doing was like drawing it out a little bit, slowing it down a little bit. You hearing the different chords in a different way, and also including live bands or the actual singers that were still alive that they were sampling. They started using those guys. So yeah, they started to incorporate R&B. I didn't have too much of an issue with it because I knew that R&B got the ladies. So
yeah,
if you couldn't. I had a good friend of mine, Romeo. I used to always be like hard, like everything had to be hard, and he was like, "Man, listen, man, you got to put on a little." He told Bobby, it was Bobby Brown, you got to put a little Bobby Brown on those tapes that you recording, man, because girls don't want to be. You can't be hard all the time. Put a, And I said, you know what? And then I did it, and it was like, oh yeah. So I didn't too much have a problem with the R&B because it was a lot of it. It got to a point where you couldn't tell the real difference. You like when you got to like the Mary J. Blige's, a lot of the beats and stuff like that were like the traditional hip hop beats. So it definitely, to me, it was a good mixture. Some of the stuff I didn't like, but overall, man, I enjoyed it. When they mixed it with rock and roll, I enjoyed with I can't remember who did Public Enemy. They remixed Bring the Noise with somebody. I can't remember the name of the rock group.
I can't remember, Rodney. Sorry, man.
Yeah. So they like this stuff that went to different genres of music that I enjoyed because it was hip hop, and it opened the door to me. Jay-Z did he redid Numb, but it was his song, was it Linkin Park? He did Numb.
Yes, it was Linkin Park.
So so I can tell you I didn't listen to Linkin Park, but that song Numb with Jay-Z on it made me go and listen to them. So I really never minded the mixing of the music. As long as it was a good song, and I could rock to it, I enjoyed it.
I mean, one artist, and I'm not really sure whether it's our side of the water or your side of the water. I think he's an American artist. He's called Common.
Yeah. No, Common's from Chicago.
Yeah, really, really talented, but again, totally different style. It's almost like it's almost like he's reading poetry.
Yeah, he's more like kind of almost like a spoken word poet.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, my email address, I Used to Love Her, that is from one of his songs. His first song I heard him he had was I Used to Love Her, and it was about hip hop. If you get a chance, look that up too. Right. It's called I Used to Love Her, and he talks about the different iterations of hip hop. He talks about where it started, how it went over to the West Coast, and he uses her as hip hop, but it's almost like he's describing a girl, but he's describing hip hop. It's a real cool way he did it.
Check that out.
Yeah.
Check it out. What did you think of like the females coming into hip hop then with like Mary J. Blige and Queen Latifah and what was she called, that one, oh God, she was in all the Snoop albums, Lady Rage.
Oh, I love Rage. So now Mary J. Blige is more of a she had a couple of like crossover kind of hits, but she's an R&B singer. But I still like her stuff. But yeah, I love Lady Rage. She was like one of those female artists that you could put her in a room with a guy, in a room full of guys,
she's
and
really
she held her own. I love Queen Latifah. She had back in the days when a lot of the hip hop artists were calling women the bitches and all that stuff. She had one of her songs, UNITY. What part of the hook was "Who you calling the bitch?" So. What I'm saying? I love that stuff. She had quite a bit of hits. Yo-Yo. Of course, she was affiliated with Ice Cube, so I definitely love Yo-Yo. MC Lyte, Roxanne Shante. I mean, the list goes on. I always, if the music is good, like I said, for me, then I'm gonna listen to it. I never had an issue with like, this is for guys and only guys could do it. I was more intrigued when a female was spitting that fire. I was more intrigued.
Because Latifah, I mean, I never realized she was as big as what she was. I mean, one of my favorite films of all time is the first film that Tupac was ever in, which is Juice.
Okay. Yeah. She was
on that.
Yeah, she was auditioning the DJs. They were
and
bringing it.
Samuel Jackson was on that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a film that's donkey's years old, and I was just like, I was going to sit down and watch it last night, and I didn't get round to. But I was looking through the credits, and it said on there that Samuel Jackson was on there, and Queen Latifah. I was like, oh yeah, of course they were, but it was a long time ago. I mean, I can't even remember. That's going back some while, wasn't it? That film. Yeah,
Samuel Jackson was the guy in the store who knew everything. So
yeah, that's it.
He was in the store, and but you had to pay him though.
I love that guy. Yeah. I love Samuel Jackson. Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
He's the best. Samuel Jackson. He could do no wrong in my eyes, and he always plays an intriguing character for me. But when you look back, you see a lot of EPMD was in that. I'm surprised. I can't believe I left them out as far as one of my favorite groups. But EPMD probably my favorite 2-man group of all time. Like they just, everything they put out for me for like a 5 or 6 album period was just like I had to gobble it up. I still like, I'm a 90s guy like you, so I still go back to that stuff. I still have that stuff when I'm working out or I'm doing yard work, my headphones on, I'm listening to old 90s stuff. That's where it is for me.
Have you still got loads of vinyl, old school stuff at all? Or did you lose it like I did along the way?
No vinyl, but I have some CDs. I have some CDs that I ripped off from LimeWire. I used to make my CDs. Were you guys big in downloading from LimeWire, stealing music?
Yeah. I used to because at that sort of time I was listening to a lot of Snoop and a lot of all that sort of stuff, and I was listening to 50 Cent and Eminem and that lot, and I discovered Green Lantern, and some of the stuff that they done through file sharing and stuff like that. So it was really cool. But I've got one album here, and I managed to pick up all 2 of their albums. There's a band called Nine. They done 2 albums. They actually done 3 albums, but I can't remember what the 3rd album is called. But the first album they done was called 9 Lives. It was about 95. It was an East Coast group, and the label was called Profile, I think the label was called. The second album was called Cloud 9. And these 2 albums, they only brought out 25,000 albums, right? They didn't sell very well, so the record label, scrapped them. But later on, they've gone massive. I mean, I managed to buy both of these albums off of Amazon about a year ago for £25 each. They're now selling for £350 an album. 9 Lives and Cloud 9. Absolutely awesome. That's 2 albums there, mate, that you would there was I think on the second album there was a DJ Froggy, I think he was called, and it honestly he raps like a frog. He's going and it's honestly shit up, but that's probably my favorite hip hop albums of all time. And if you've not listened to them, you've got to check them out.
I didn't listen to the album, but I do know What You Want. The song What You Want. That was, to me, that was the biggest hit that I remember, and I think that was off the first. His voice kind of had that grumbly voice. Kind of like
I don't believe a word of it.
Yeah,
real deep and really awesome. Totally good.
Yeah, I remember. I didn't realize that that they did more. I just remember that song because it was one of the popular songs. So because for a while, all you got your songs from MTV or whatever. The popular videos was what you heard, and if it, I guess back then too, if you bought an album, but we used to look like at the Source magazine or certain magazines that would tell you if it had like 5 mics, or if it was a good album and stuff like that. So we would kind of go by that and not buy the albums as much. So I'm pretty sure I didn't buy like 9, but I did have an album. Nobody really talks about them. They're kind of obscure group, but back in the days they had a hit, Ill Al Scratch. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
Ill Al Scratch. Yeah. They had the song Come Around My Way. It was popular. It was pretty popular, but they had probably like about 4 or 5 like hits that were pretty good songs. But so I was immersed in it. And again, I'm gonna say good music has always been good music to me. But I didn't know that. I got to look up 9 now. I didn't know that they did more, and I didn't know that their music is still.
Well, I've actually got the albums here somewhere in my album rack. They're like gold dust to me. I'm not going to get rid of them. They're probably here somewhere. And afterwards, when we finish, I'm sure they've done 3 albums. Like I said, I've definitely got 2. I've probably got the 3rd one, but I can't remember what the 3rd album is called. But I mean, what you got to remember is I'm so jealous of you because I love the music, but over here in the UK, it wasn't. At the time, it was hard to get hold of all this material. It was kind of hard to find these bands and these artists. And so we was having to there was a magazine that I used to subscribe to. It was called Hip Hop Connection. And I don't know whether that's I'm sure it came from America. So all of these artists that I would read up about was literally from this magazine that came from America. I'm sure it was. And some month it would come through, some month it wouldn't. I was having to get it sent down from London, so
Right.
it all depended on whether it came across from America at the time. So I'd be nervously waiting every month for the first week of the month to see if I had a Hip Hop Connection magazine come through. So that was about that, and MTV was about the only source that I used to find out about these groups.
Mm-hmm. So was like London is like New York, where stuff, that's the hub, and everything kind of filters out from London?
Yeah, pretty much so, mate, to be honest with you. I mean, like I say, when Snoop hit the town, when Snoop Doggy Style came out, and then you had Dr. Dre, and Warren G and Cypress Hill, all of a sudden hip hop started getting big. It did start getting big, and then of course you had Tupac arrive and Biggie, and then Tupac died and Biggie died, and it's almost like it was like art in the sense that when an artist dies, he becomes bigger. So when those two died, all of a sudden it blew up big time over here, and so people were saying, "Oh, I'm an East Coast guy and I'm a West Coast guy, and we don't wear this and we don't wear that." And then over in America, you had the Bloods and the Crips and all that sort of stuff. And what was it like living over there at that time, Rodney? I mean, you obviously had the gang rivalry. Was it worrying wearing that sort of stuff on the street and listening to specific music from different sides of East and West? Was it?
No,
did you ever?
No, not where I live in Connecticut. So, they're like Bloods and Crips now, actually. But back in the days, it wasn't. We had gangs, but it wasn't like Bloods and Crips. So you didn't have to worry about what colors you were per se. The gangs did affiliate with colors, but it wasn't just a clear, blue and red. It was, they may have had 2 or 3 different colors that they wore, but they would wear like the beads. So like almost like not rosary beads, but that style without the cross, and it would have your colors on it. And but it never, as far as me, certain places I just didn't go just because I knew. And if I had a problem with somebody, I definitely didn't go to the areas that I had problems with. The same as if they had a problem, they didn't come to where I was at, or if they did, there had to be consequences for somebody. It's a bunch of it's nonsense. So that kind of filtered into hip hop, and it was sad to see because I like both artists. I lean towards Big, but I love pop. I love both artists. It was sad that you're forced to kind of, some of the songs, that was made about the other camp, you didn't even want to listen to because, you actually like both artists. So, that was more like a West Coast thing and a New York and LA thing. Connecticut has always been like the little brother out in the corner, New York's little brother in the corner here, where, they didn't really take it serious anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of like, even if we were shouting out like, "Hey, we're here," they, you put your hand on your little brother's head and you just hold him there, and so he can't fight you. So that's what Connecticut kind of was, where and we, there were people that liked, certain people and didn't like other ones, but we never really, the group of kids that I grew up with and the guys that I ran with, we enjoyed everything. We can get into an argument about something, but that was just a matter of taste. Everything is kind of like an acquired taste. So that's all that was. It was never anything serious and to see it get to that level. Like when you have like your favorite artist getting killed the way, you would get killed, like right in the middle of the hood, like a drive-by. When you have stuff like that, that stuff like that turned me off. So I would say, around then, after both of those two guys passed away, I would say I kind of lost my way as far as, enjoying hip hop anymore. Cause it was just, I felt like it's really not that serious.
Yeah. I mean, I love talking to you about this, Rod, and I could talk to you for hours about this because, for me, growing up with hip hop in my background, it was totally different to how you grew up listening to hip hop. Because for me, it was almost like a story, whereas for you over in the States and being a black guy and all that sort of stuff, and what they were talking about, it was life.
Soundtrack. It was a soundtrack.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like driving through Compton, whereas you can, to me, I can imagine what it would be like the equivalent over here, like we've got Moss Side in Manchester, and in London there's some real rough parts in that, but I can't imagine what it would be like driving through to these places, and it's really, really rough, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but you don't, it's more rough when you look back upon it. Like going through it, life is just life. So you're there, and when you wake up and you go to the corner store, you can get shot, but you don't spend your days thinking about like, oh man, I can get shot like that on that level. You do to an extent, but after it's just like you play sport. You played it's soccer over here, but you call it football. Did you ever play like on an organized team? Like, so when you're going to play against like a really good opponent, a lot of times you guys would talk about who you're going to play next. And if it was somebody good, you'd be oh man, they got, and you go into it nervous, but then when the ball drops, it's just football.
Yeah. The adrenaline's pumping.
Yeah. But when they, I don't know, when they toss the ball out there and you get running, it's just football. So it was just life. And even though you may have been afraid to do certain things, sometimes it was just life. And when you look back on it, that's when you realize how you dodged the bullet, and the things that you were doing wasn't funny, things that you laughed at, and the things that you normalized, they weren't normal things. People, when you start to get and talk to people and you realize that some people have never experienced that at all. So when you think it's normal, I grew up thinking it's normal, and then I tell somebody about it and they're like, I can't imagine having to do that. But it didn't seem abnormal to me. The way I can tell that it's not normal is what I want my kids to go through that. That's where you're able to say, you know what, I wouldn't want my kids to do that. That's when you start going, well, then it's not normal. Right. The hip hop was there for me at that time, man. The huge soundtrack in my life. I could find an album or a song, to encapsulate how I was feeling that particular day. So that's why it was so powerful for me. And maybe that's why, we have an affinity to the 90s, is because we were coming into our own at that time. And that music was just like there when you were sad, when you were mad, when you were happy, you put on those songs and you have fond memories. Now we don't connect emotionally with anything that's out there today. So it's hard for us to look at it and even give it any kind of value. It's just a bunch of noise. I don't really like it. But, stuff that's, it's there for you. It's there for you at that time. It means more to you, like your first kiss.
Yeah.
Hip hop was your first kiss.
Yeah. Definitely. and my first sexual experience as well, I think.
Uh-oh. Was it doggy style? All right.
No, it wasn't, mate. It wasn't.
I'm going too far. All right. So I'm gonna wrap it up. But before I do, one of the fun things about talking to you is that every now and then you say something or I say something and it means something totally different.
Yeah.
In the States. So I have to start off by saying, I don't know what we were talking about. And you said one of the favorite things you used to love to do when you were a kid was to sniff rubbers.
Sniff rubbers, yeah.
Right.
But what it was, I can't remember what we was discussing, but that was it. When I was a little kid, 5 or 6, I used to collect rubbers, and I said that the reason why I used to collect these rubbers was because I used to like to sniff them because they all smell different. And Rodney's laughing his head off, and he is now. While we're talking, he's laughing, and I'm like, what's the matter? He goes, well, over here in the States, rubbers means something totally different. What are you talking about over there? And I said, rubbers is in, an eraser, a thing that you rub your pencil out with, and I over your way, a rubber is a condom, but it kind of got us talking about the different things that we say over in, the other side of the water, how how it can be misinterpreted, and that it was quite funny, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah. So and we talk same thing. We said football for us. Do you guys hate us calling it football?
Well, that's what it is. Football is football. You call it soccer over there.
No,
don't you?
I'm saying, yeah. So do you hate us calling our American football?
No, not really. Because it kind of, the Americans make me laugh with their sports because they call it, they do little things like the World Series. Here we are at the World Series, but it's not actually the World Series because it's only you Americans that play it. How can it be a worldwide series if we don't come over and kick your asses at it?
Well, listen, we are, American. I don't know about y'all, but over here we think we're the shit, right? So we are the world. So hey, we don't need anybody else.
I must admit, mate, and until the last few years, Americans used to piss me off, right? And it's just the one thing I've learned in life is that talking to people is education, and it's so easy to watch the news, listen to things on the news, and draw a conclusion. And now I don't do that anymore. I don't draw a conclusion until I've spoken to somebody, because going back a few years ago, it was almost like we was your younger brothers. If ever you got in the shit, you dragged us in with it. So you had the Iraq and Afghan war and that lot, and you kicked off and we had to follow you. And it was always the Americans. And if we said something, you had to go twice as big. And, it was always like that. And now I never used to want to go to America because I said, I don't want to go over there because it's just like they've always got to have if we've got a 2-liter car, they've got a 4-liter car. If we've got this, they've got that. And I couldn't be bothered with that. It didn't interest me at all. But one thing that I've learned from doing podcasting is that the majority of my listeners are American, and the majority of my guests that I have on my show are American. And I love you guys now over the water now because it's not what I thought it was like at all. And, you have got a few crazy things that you do, but then so have us Brits. I was going to say you've got Trump, we've got Boris, so but you haven't anymore. You've even got rid of him. So we've got to try and get rid of Boris now.
We've got to try and get rid of Boris Pfeffel Johnson. That's all we've got to do.
What's his middle name?
A Pfeffel.
Is that a English thing? What is it? Is that?
I don't know what the fuck it is. I think he's I'm not sure where they're from. Actually, Boris Johnson is American.
Really?
I'm pretty sure that Boris Johnson was born in America.
I'm not claiming that.
That's why he has to be better than everybody else, you see, because he's secretly American. Now, I may be wrong. I may not be American.
You never admit
that's
that
something
he's
I'm
wrong.
going to have to look up, mate. I'm pretty sure that Harmony Garcia, a.k.a. the Bliss Broker, I'm pretty sure that she said that Boris Johnson is American, or he was born in America.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. You could. I don't know his politics or whatever, but if you want to trade, you can. Even though Trump's not in office anymore, you can have him if you want.
But what would you trade? What would you trade? What would you get trade with me now? What a bit of America would you trade for a bit of British? I know it's your show. You should be asking me the questions, but I just have to ask.
Maybe in all honesty, maybe I would trade the fact that is it legal to have guns over there?
Here?
Yeah. Can a citizen have a gun?
No.
Yeah. If there's anything that I would trade, and that doesn't mean like, you don't have guns, so you'll have knife crime and all that stuff. But, the damage that I've seen with guns, if I never had to pull out a gun or never had to have another gun pulled out on me or never had to shoot a gun or have somebody shoot, if I never had to see that again, I would be okay with my life. Now, to get guns out of the hands of Americans, that's not going to happen because people, they love their guns. They love their guns, and you ain't getting them.
See, I can't understand this is something that we could talk about for another 2 hours. I don't understand the gun culture in America. I don't understand why it is so massive. I understand that, a gentleman we say over here, a gentleman should be able to look after his castle, but I can't imagine guns in this country. Over here, we always go on about how the Americans have got a real bad problem with guns. And, but what we don't see, is that we look at ourselves. in this country, we have got a horrific problem of knife crime.
Right.
People, I mean, it's one thing pulling a gun out on somebody and shooting them as you go past in the car, right? But to go up to somebody with a blade and stick it 4 or 5 times in their neck or in their stomach, to me, that's a totally different level. For sure. Yeah. And
it's very personal.
I don't understand how anybody could physically shoot somebody. I don't understand how anybody could go up to somebody and stab them. Now, perhaps, if something horrific was to happen to my family, God forbid it never does, then you look at things in a totally different situation, right? But I still don't think that I could go and shoot somebody or stab somebody. So as much as I go on about guns in the States and I don't understand it, I don't understand the knife crime over here. It's two things that are just, personally me, I just think the world would be better off getting rid of.
Yeah, if I could, the damage I've seen, if I could get rid of it, I would. And I don't know how people would protect each other or themselves. Maybe they would go to the knives and maybe it'd be worse. But, the damage that I've seen, if I never had to see another gun, I'd be okay. And I would trade that. I would not trade sniffing rubbers though.
I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that you Americans do weirdly. Because the thing is, you speak the English. We've talked about this, right? Yeah. You speak the English language, but it's not the English language because you've it up. Yeah. We speak English. We made the language, and now you've called it. What do you call it? The English, the American English. What do you call it? What's your language that you speak?
It's just I don't know.
American English.
Yeah, proper English. I don't know.
Proper. Yeah, I mean that's a West Country word. That's a Cornish Devon word. Proper.
Yeah,
is UK.
Yeah, no. Listen, I told you once we dumped all that tea out over in Boston, dumped all that tea, we were done with you guys. Just wiped our hands. Get your. You know what they're doing with Trump right now? They're trying to get him out of there. Once they got rid of that tea, they got you guys out of there. And,
but he's Scottish, isn't he? Old Trump. I think his mum was born in Scotland, and I think his dad was born in Germany, if I do believe.
You know what? I couldn't tell you, man. I have interest in looking up stuff. Trump is not one of the. Actually, people in power. Maybe I'll listen to something here or there, but I have no interest in listening to or finding out where people in power are, and particularly Trump. I don't really. For many reasons. Again, everything we talk about, we could talk about for 2 hours. So I don't want to get too political, but so I'm going to wrap it up, but I want you to tell everybody how they could find you if you're interested in people finding you.
You can find me at number 10 Downing Street, where I'm generally having some fun pissing about with my hair and being a silly bugger.
No, honestly, guys, Rodney, thanks for letting me come on your show. I do a podcast called the Marc Jeffrey Podcast Show where I just randomly talk to people about their hobbies, their interests, issues, stuff in life. I love getting to know people. So you can go on any podcasting directory and type in the Marc Jeffrey Podcast Show. That's MarcJeffrey, the Marc Jeffrey Podcast Show. Type that in Google. You can find us. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on all those platforms. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. That's my 2 hangout zones. And just type in Marc Jeffrey and come and find me. I'm the funny looking guy with glasses and generally got a big microphone stuck in front of my face. But we have some fun, Rodney, don't we?
Cool. Appreciate you. Could we go out with a little Boris talking about, I want to know what you guys are doing as far as the coronavirus and your preparation. If you don't mind, Boris, could you give us an idea of what you guys are doing?
Well, it's quite simple. We have just started a second lockdown in this country. It's vitally important that we lock down straight away. We need to do this to save lives. So we need to start straight away. So as from next Thursday, we will be going into lockdown. You can go to work or you can stay at home, or you can stay at home or go to work. You can wear a mask or not wear a mask. You can have fun but not have fun. Drink tea but don't drink tea. See the Queen but don't see the Queen. And just make it up as you go along, and just loads of people will sadly die. But we've just got to get through this. We've got to keep the sovereignty and survive and have fun.